Hey everybody, and we are live once again with Battlesnake Stay Home and Code. We got a great little tutorial here today for you. My name is Chris. I'm one of the people who's lucky enough to work full-time on Battlesnake. And for this stream, we're going to be hanging out with Brendan Brown from Echosec, who's a longtime friend of Battlesnake's, who is here to talk a little bit about developing a Battlesnake in JavaScript. He's got the he's going to be working based on our like developed starter snake that we have off the site. But yeah, Brendan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Chris. You guys can hear me okay? Awesome. So my name is Brandon. I've been with the Battlesnake community basically since the inception of it. And I've helped out with all of the live events. And most recently, I've been helping out with the Twitch streaming and basically everything that you're seeing right now on Twitch and hopefully later on many other platforms. Today, specifically, I'm here to talk about building up a starter snake using the starter snake node project that I sort of built it, but Battlesnake has taken it over, and I've done some contributions since then. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen. Just make sure I pick the right one here. All right. Okay, so over on the right here, this is the Battlesnake starter snake node project. This is the one that you want to use when you're building out your snake using JavaScript, if that is the language that you choose or that you eventually want to start with. There are many others. They're all available on the Battlesnake docs website. So docs.battlesnake.com is a place that you want to go if you want to learn about any of the API, customizing your snake, a list of all of the starter snakes. There's a bunch of other languages that are supported here, Go, Java. If you've been following along on Twitch so far, Brad has graciously done some starter snake tutorials using the Go and the Python packages. And I think there's probably a few more that are going to be done. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about JavaScript and how you can use JavaScript to build your snake. So the first step that you're going to want to do is, if you don't have a GitHub account, that's probably the first thing you're going to want to create. And the reason for that is GitHub has this utility on the website called forking. And forking allows you to take some code and use and make your own version of it effectively. So I've gone ahead and I already have a fork of this project available. I already have a GitHub account. And so I'm going to go to it. But if you clicked on that fork button, what you're going to see is an option to select the organization or user that you want to fork it to. And then what you get greeted with is a page that kind of looks like this. So you get originally forked from the Battlesnake official starter snake node, but you get your own version of it. The second step that you're going to want to do, and this is mostly if you're familiar already with a tool called Git, which is effectively what powers most of GitHub. There's a couple options here that you can choose. So there's this green button on the page. So GitHub provides an application called GitHub Desktop, and it's a really good way to get started with anything GitHub. There's a lot of integrations and stuff. And if you click on Open in Desktop, that's going to open it in that application. Or you can just download the zip, and this will download a zip containing all of the contents inside of this repository. But the one thing that we're going to do today is we're going to be cloning this cloning it locally with the URL that they provide here. Now, I've already gone ahead and done this, but normally what you want to do is you want to take this URL and copy it to your clipboard. And I've moved over to my terminal over here, and if you were about to start this project, let's go back up to here, and you are going to clone this repository into a folder, what you might want to do, or what you will do rather, is git clone and then paste that URL. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull down all of the information. So let's go starter I'm going to create a new folder, starter snake node 2. And this is going to pull down all that code from that repository. So if I cd into that starter snake node 2 folder and open up a new instance of code, I'm not going to use this, but I'm going to demo what would happen if you were to start using this. So what you're going to get is you're going to get some files, and you'll be able to start working from this. So I'm going to close this because I've already done this. And from here, what you have is there's a couple files. The main one that you want to pay attention to is this index.js. This is like the entry point to the snake. Now, there's a bunch of code in here that you probably don't have to care about because we've written it all for you. And generally, you don't have to worry about it. There's some comments in here that point you towards some of the functionality of where you want to get started, or if you want to customize the snake. There's 4 endpoints that this snake is going to listen on. One is the start endpoint. So this is when a game gets started with your snake. This endpoint on that snake gets called. And what you need to do is you need to respond with a couple things. So I'm going to bring up the documentation over here. And let's go endpoints, signal start of a game. So given this information, what you need to do to respond to this endpoint with is 3 things: color, head type, and tail type. Now, we default to just a random color. We also pick the regular snake type and tail type. Now, you can pick from a list of them over here. I'm not going to go too deep into them, but experiment with it if you want to get started with that. And at the end of this start endpoint, we respond with that data. And this is the basic flow of how all of these endpoints kind of respond. So we're going to disregard the start for now, and we're going to move into the move. This is where the meat and potatoes of this snake happens. This is where all of your logic is going to go. And excuse me, the move endpoint takes you provide a move on the move endpoint, but it gives you the same data across every endpoint call. So every move that you make in the game of Battlesnake, the move endpoint is called, and the state of the game is passed to you. So it's passed to you using the request object. Every endpoint in the snake is given a request object, and you pass back the response object. So with that in mind, our base snake, the starter snake node package, we actually generate a random move for you. So there's only 4 possible moves. And if you really think about it, there's only 3 possible moves, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to go with 4. If you are pointing up, your moves are left, right, or possibly down. But the downside is that you don't want to go down into your body. So for now, what we do is we just we use random choice, and this basically will make a snake that's going to go around the grid and probably not be the most effective snake. So the third endpoint here is the end endpoint. So when a game is completed or your snake has died, what's going to happen is, the game engine is going to post to the end endpoint, and that signals that any game that you're in is now done. And then we also have a ping endpoint. It's just used for some internal stuff, basically to see if your snake is alive before any match starts.
So when you say there's only really 3 possible moves, could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so given a move on a board, you really can't go back on yourself. So that's going to be the one move that you can't make. So if you're facing up and you have a decision where, say you're in the middle of the board, you can either go left, you can either go right, or you can go up, but you can't go down because you've already come from the position of down. So you don't want to go back on your body. So that's probably why That is why you really only have 3 moves, and you want to make the choice wisely to how that's going to change the state of the game. So there's one more file that you may or may not want to tweak. This is some mostly internal stuff, but if you want to get really in depth into customizing the snake package, there's some code in here that you can play with. But for all intents and purposes, the move command is the one place that you're going to be doing a lot of your work. So if we take this code and we want to run it, the one thing that you're going to want to do is in the JavaScript ecosystem, there are different versions of NodeJS. And NodeJS is the sort of component that allows you to run this code and be able to deploy it to a server and have it run there and respond. So the tool that I've chosen to use for running Node is a tool called NVM. And NVM is short for Node Version Manager. There are many other out there. And I want to install a specific version. So for this project, I want to install Node 12. And I've already done that because I already have a NVM installed and that particular version of Node because I've been working on this. But there's also another tool that comes with it called NPM, and you can see that here. So NPM is a tool that hooks up to the package manager called NPM registry. What that does is there's a bunch of packages out on the internet, part of the NPM registry, and we install a bunch of them that are defined in the package JSON. So you really don't have to care about some of these, but they're here if you want to explore. But what we want to do, and what happens is we need to install some of these dependencies in order to run this snake. So what we're going to do is if you have NVM installed, and I think we'll get the mods to maybe post it into the chat or potentially afterwards. I can link to it. Installing NVM is fairly easy. Once you have that installed, you install the version of Node. And then once you have that version of Node installed, you have access to NPM. So we're going to install the dependencies. So we'll go npm install. This can take a few minutes if it's the first time installing it. Fortunately, I've done that install already. So this only took a few seconds. So now we have some of the dependencies installed. We can actually run our snake. And we haven't made any changes to code. So let's go npm run start. Now, before I hit enter, I'll just show you what's happening here. So inside of that package JSON file, there's this scripts section. And this is just an object inside of the JSON whole package. And there's this defined script called start. And this just calls a command which is going to take that index.js and run it through and allow it to be exposed through port 5000. You can customize this if you have an issue with some ports on your computer, but generally speaking, you probably don't have to touch this. So with that in mind, let's hit enter and see what happens. So npm run start fired up a tool called nodemon. This just allows you to run the server, and if you make any changes to your snake, say let's maybe add another console.log in here. If you save this file, it's going to reload your server so that you don't have to go and kill it and rerun it. So it's just kind of a nicety that allows you to have a better experience when you're building out your snake. Oops, so let's go and delete that. And so we'll see that this is running right now, and it's running locally. So the default endpoint, the default response for a snake, so this is running on localhost port 5000. So I'm going to go and fire up a tab here and go to localhost port 5000. And the default sort of endpoint or default response for the snake is to return message with a key message and the value being your Battlesnake is alive. And this just shows you that it's running. So now we can actually get started building out some pieces to the snake. So unfortunately, we can't keep that up and running and use it on Battlesnake because Battlesnake can't contact our local host. And so there's a part to this where we're going to introduce Heroku, which is a deployment platform, which allows you to actually run your snake on a server elsewhere out in the internet that Battlesnake can actually contact. So just to reiterate, we're going to go to Heroku.com. So this is the tool that we're going to be using for deployment. If you don't have an account set up for it, that's okay. You can go ahead and create one. It may ask for a credit card. I'm not entirely sure. I've had a Heroku account for a very long time. So your mileage may vary on that. But once you do have an account set up, you'll be greeted with a screen that looks like this. You don't have any apps yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new app. We're going to call it, let's call it Brandon Node Snake. That name is available, and we're going to go ahead and create app. Now, there's some region selections here, but for the sake of having the quickest reaction time for your snake, you generally want to use the America or United States region, because that is where the Battlesnake servers are running from. So if you want to minimize the latency between requests to your snake and back to the game, you want to have the lowest amount of hops to that server and back. So we've created our application here, and it doesn't know anything about us at this point. But there's this one very cool tool in Heroku where you don't have to use the command line, where you can actually deploy it directly from GitHub. And I love using this because when I'm teaching how to get started with Heroku, most people jump directly into the command line, which is where a lot of people spend, like myself, developing, and we spend a lot of time there. But for someone that's getting started with using Heroku, using the command line can be a little bit daunting. So Heroku has this ability to connect your repository on GitHub with your Heroku app. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set that up, because I find it much easier to make that mental connection with getting code into my repository and getting it deployed as easy as possible. Well, excuse me, we'll go back and we'll use the command line afterwards. But to get set up, this I find is the easiest way. So it asks you, if you haven't connected with GitHub yet, it will take you through the auth process, and you'll have to authenticate that you're allowing Heroku to access some very minor things in your GitHub account. But once you come back to this page, you're presented with an option to select your user and then find the repository that you want to use. So we know right now that it is starter snake node. And then you click search, and that will bring up the starter snake node repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect, give it a few minutes to load here. Oh, it looks like we're being rate limited. That's unfortunate. But it looks like it's connected. So the second part to this is now that we have our application or our snake repository connected to Heroku, another nicety that's provided by Heroku is that we can now enable automatic deployments. So what that means is that whenever you do a commit up to GitHub, which I'll demonstrate soon after we get this connected, once you do a commit and push it up to your repository on GitHub, you can enable automatic deployments. So we're going to choose a branch to deploy from. I haven't pushed this up yet, so let's git push origin tutorial. So I created a branch called tutorial on this repository, and I've just now pushed that up to GitHub. And so we're going to see if that shows up in here. It does. So we're going to deploy from this branch specifically. We also want to check that if there's any continuous integration stuff that needs to pass before deploying. And then we're going to go ahead and enable automatic deploys. So the things that we've done here is we've connected our repository from GitHub to our Heroku account, specifically to this application. Releases from the tutorial branch are now going to be automatically deployed. So whenever I do a git commit and a git push, up to GitHub will show that a deployment has actually happened. So now that we've got the Heroku side of this set up, we're going to go over to the activity feed, and you'll see here that nothing's really happened yet. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into our terminal here, and we're going to make a deployment to GitHub. And so the one thing that we can do that I didn't demo here is that we can do a deploy from this branch, but I want to demonstrate how it actually works inside of Git. So let's make a change, and so snake move right now is going to be random, but let's make snake move go right. And then what we'll do is we'll do a git status. So we'll see here that the index file has been changed. And so we'll go ahead and we'll git add the entire folder here. We'll do another git status just to see what's happened. So now we've staged these changes for commit. So we'll do git commit -m only go right. And so this has now committed those changes to the local Git repository, but we're not quite yet up on GitHub. So let's go git push origin tutorial. So now we're pushing that up to GitHub. And so what's going to happen is GitHub has now received that code, and you can see that it's completed here. But the interesting thing is if we go over to Heroku over here and we do a quick refresh, we'll do one more. Maybe GitHub is being a little slow right now. So if we go back over to GitHub, we can see that we have the tutorial branch, and we pushed up a commit to GitHub, and we've made the snake go right, and that's the move that we're going to send back to Battlesnake. So now if we go back to the activity, it should be auto-deploying from, it should be auto-deploying from the tutorial branch. We'll see in a second here, hopefully. Oh, it might be waiting on CI that doesn't exist. So let's uncheck that. So let's go back to the activity feed. Okay, so let's force a deploy. So we're going to deploy, normally, under most circumstances, what would happen is you would see, oh, there we go. So this is the manual build that I did. But normally what you would see is that GitHub has now triggered a build, and we can go ahead and we can view that build progress. And so we'll go back up to the top here. So in the Heroku dashboard here, this is the activity feed, and the activity feed shows you what's happening on the Heroku side. So it has detected that we're deploying a Node app, and that we're going to set it's setting some variables for us. The one that we want to pay attention to here is the node end equal to production. This basically tells some packages that we might be using that we're in production mode, and it should disable any debug logging or that sort of thing. It's going to go ahead and it's installing some of the binaries to actually run, and then it's going to install some dependencies, and it's doing a build and caching things. And now we've gotten to the point where it is launched, and it should be available at this URL right here. So if we take this URL and we'll copy and paste it into a new browser, remember that the default for a snake is to return this message, your Battlesnake is alive. And so now we have it running on Heroku, and the default message there is the same thing. And we can see that here. So now what we can do is we have a running, functioning snake. It might not be smart, but the thing is that it's actually running. And it only took us a few commands and a couple clicks of our mouse to get set up. Now that's being said, I already had a bunch of these accounts and stuff set up, but for all intents and purposes, it only took a few things. So now what we can do is, one, we have code downloaded and we push some changes. Two, we've gotten it running on Heroku. The third thing that we can do now is we can go and set that up on Battlesnake. So if you head over to play.battlesnake.com and if you authenticate with your GitHub account and log in, you'll be presented with this homepage right here. And you can click on My Battlesnakes. You might see a different page than me, but you do have an option here to create a new Battlesnake. So this is the place where we're going to take that URL that we just copied, that's still in my buffer here, and we're going to paste that as the URL for our snake. And we're going to call this Node Tutorial Snake. You can add a description, tell people a little bit about your snake and how you made it or how it behaves. You can also add some tags. For right now, we're not going to make it available for anyone to add the snake to a game because we just want to play with it. We're testing right now, and we might not want to put it into a match with a bunch of other snakes. So we're going to go and hit save. So now that we've had this tutorial snake set up, what we can do is we can now go and create a new game with this snake. So I'm going to create a new game. I'm going to add the Node Tutorial Snake, which is the one that we just created, and we're going to start a new game. So the game is running in the background here, and we're going to go click play. Our snake died. That's not great, but the one thing that I will show you here is that we know that because we programmed it to only go right, that snake is going right. So now if we program it to go, let's say, down, we're going to go through the same set of steps again, and we're going to go git add all, git commit -m, only go down, git push origin tutorial. And so this is pushing it back up to GitHub. This is pushing that change that I just made. And so now if we go back to Heroku, theoretically, we should see another build being kicked off here. Possibly. I wonder if the GitHub integration isn't working right now. Okay, there we go. So this is the automated build now that we can see here. So I didn't do anything. This was triggered automatically from my push to GitHub. So let's go and view the build progress here. Fortunately, these builds are actually very, very fast, so we don't have to wait too long. So it uses, whenever you do a deploy, it uses the exact same URL. So the nice thing is we don't have to go in and change our Battlesnake URL. We can just go back to Battlesnake here, and we can go create rematch. And create rematch is going to create a new game with the same snake. And so now, if we click play, we notice that the snake went down and moved out of bounds. So again, not a very smart snake, but we've demonstrated that we can take code that is running locally and be able to push it up. So now let's go and let's run that random functionality that comes with it by default. Git add. I have a bunch of shortcuts that I'm so used to. Git commit -m. Revert to randomness. Git push origin tutorial. Okay, so now we've pushed it up to GitHub. We should be able to go back to the activity feed and see in a few moments here that a new build is going to be kicked off. Okay, we'll see that this new build has been kicked off. Let's zoom in on that a little bit here. Build has succeeded. We're just waiting for it to actually get out to a dyno. And so now we're live. So now what we can do is go back to the game page, create rematch, and click play. So it moved out of bounds. So let's create another one again. Play. Yep, so the randomness, what's happening here, and we can use our arrow keys to go back and forth. So the randomness here chose to go right the first time, but then left the second time. And that's not a good algorithm. That does not make a snake. So let's make this snake a little bit smarter. So I have gone through some of this already, and I have some functionality that I'm going to put in place here. So let's get rid of the randomness of this snake here. And let's start actually supplying some smarts to this snake. So one thing that we might want to do is we might want to make the snake sort of spin in circles. Spin in circles as we, instead of just going around and being random. Now, this is going to randomly spin in circles. And so what we can do here is we can set snake move is equal to spin in circles. So what's happening here is we're saying the possible moves that we can make are up, right, down, and left. And then because this is an array that we've defined here, we can access the index of it. So there's going to be 4 indexes. And if you're familiar with JavaScript, everything is 0 indexed. Also, if you're not familiar with JavaScript, everything is 0 indexed. So our options here are 0, 1, through to 3. So up is going to correspond to the first index, right 1, down 2, left 3. And we can select one of those options inside of square brackets, which is the sort of index notation for arrays. So this uses turn, which is available from the game object. So if we head back over to the Battlesnake API and we go to the turn page, oh, why did that disappear? Let's refresh that here. So if we take a turn within the game, so the JSON payload that's sent to the server, which is available on the request body, so request.body, and then we want to assign it to a variable. So we're going to assign request.body to this variable data. And what we can do is we can actually pull some of these top level things out of the game, or out of the JSON payload that gets sent to us. So let's take turn out of data, and we'll use turn inside of the spin in circles. And so what we're doing here is we're doing some basic math, which is take the current turn and use the modulus operator. And because there's only 4 possible scenarios which we can do, we're going to do turn mod 4. And that's going to return an index number, which is equivalent to turn mod 4. And this is basically just a function which returns the possible move, which is up, right, down, or left, based on that math. So let's save this. And actually, let's do git add git commit -m spin in a circle. Oh, let's fix that. Spin in a circle. Oops. There we go. And git push origin tutorial, if I can spell correctly. Okay, so we pushed up to GitHub. Again, if we go back to the activity page on Heroku, we should see in a few seconds here that a build has been deployed, or a build is in progress, and there we see it.
So Brandon, I noticed you have some like logging in your in the code there. How would you actually view that log in Heroku? Like if I wanted to see what these moves are called each turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you get access to that?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that we can do that. One is, I believe the Heroku interface has a logs page, if I can find it in here. Where is it? Settings? No. Nope. Resources. Where is the Heroku logs? Logs. Nope. Interesting. Okay, so the Heroku provides a CLI tool, and maybe this is now a good time to go and jump into that. So instead of, let's go here, Heroku with Git. So we've got GitHub connected, and that's great. But one of the things that Heroku provides is the ability for you to manage everything from the CLI. So if you go and download the Heroku CLI, which I believe I have, I don't have it. So let's go and install that right now. So if I click on this Heroku CLI, it's going to take me to a page where I can go and download the installer. It provides some installation methods for various platforms. I'm on Windows right now, so I'm going to go and download the 64-bit installer. So once that is running, it is going to install off screen here. So just give me one moment. Oh, actually, you know what? Because I'm running in WSL, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux, I don't need the Windows one. I actually need this one. So let's install it inside of WSL. So what this is going to do is this is going to install a binary which allows you to do some Heroku stuff locally. So now that we've got this Heroku tool, we can call it, and we can see that it output the help page. So I haven't set this up, so let's go Heroku. I think it's called auth, and we're going to log in. Auth login, and let's go open the browser. And so I'm already authenticated inside of Heroku in this browser. So I just have to click login. And now it has done the round trip back to the process to do the actual authentication. And now I'm logged in with my user. So let's go clear. So now what we can do is we can, let's call this again and see what options we have here. So let's go and list apps, Heroku apps. Oops. Heroku apps. So this is going to list all of the apps that we have running on Heroku. And now the way that you need to Heroku, you need to view, what we're going to do is we're going to view the logs. So what you need to do in order to do that is specify the app that we actually want to view and call the logs command. Oh, interesting. I think they've changed it since the last time I've used it. Heroku logs -h. Oh, that already output the help. Okay, so I think I did it in the wrong order here. Heroku logs -a. We'll paste that. Here we go. So let's make this a little bit bigger here so we can see. Maybe I'll actually just zoom out just for this little bit here. So what we can now see is we've actually hooked into the Heroku, what's called the Heroku Logs drain. And this is the logs that are streamed directly from the Heroku platform into whatever sort of connection or connector that you have set up. For right now, it's the this logs call to the application. So now I think what we can do is we can go -f, and that will actually do a follow. Oops, maybe not. There is a command here where we can start, oh, it's -t. So what this is going to do is this is going to keep a connection open to the Heroku Logs endpoint, and this is going to give us the ability to view those console log statements that we're making directly from the Heroku dyno, which is the server that's running right now. So we've made a deploy, and that was the one that I did just before we switched over to explaining this here. And if I refresh this page, you can see that it is we're getting a connection to the default endpoint. And so we can see that it's running and that it's streaming the logs into this right now. So let's close that, and let's go back and create a new game. So we're back on the games page. We're going to go create rematch. And so now we can see those logs happening in the background. And if we go and click play this game, we can see that our snake is now spinning in circles. Now, this isn't a very efficient way to survive a game, but we did last 100 turns. And provided that a snake didn't run into us or try and take us out, this might be a way to win any beginner category where a snake lasts long enough to survive everyone else. So this is a fairly easy way to sort of outlive everyone, but we don't really want to stop here. The one thing that we can do is improve the AI for this particular snake. But for the sake of time, we'll maybe take over that in the next time slot that I have for doing the demo. So we'll extend some of this functionality, and we'll take it further from there. So let's do a quick review here. So if you want to view the documentation for getting started with any of the languages, specifically for the JavaScript starter snake in Node, you want to go to Battlesnake official starter snake node on GitHub, and I'm sure the mods will post this into the Slack, or sorry, into the Twitch chat. And the documentation, the API documentation, is going to show you all of the available keys and values that are supplied to you in order to make a decision. So we pulled out turn, but there's actually quite a few more options for you to pull from in order to make a decision. So when a move happens in the game, you're provided with a JSON payload which contains a game ID, and this is the individual game that this move is responding to. Now, an interesting tidbit of information, which is very nice to know early on, is that your snake might be running in multiple games at once. Don't assume that you're the only one running a game on your snake. If you make it public, which we didn't do with this snake, which I'm going to go and make public, so anyone can go and add this snake now into a game. If I check this box, which is allow anyone to add a snake to a game. So now if I go and create a new game and I search for Brandon B927, we'll see here that I now have the Node tutorial snake available to select. And anyone can go and they can add this snake to a game. So coming back to the documentation here, we have a couple more options. So we have the game and the ID, the turn number. We also have the board state, which provides the height and width. So this is how many X and Y coordinates the game is going to be height and width wise. There's an array of food with X and Y coordinates available here. Remember, X and Y is from the top left down and to the right. That kind of confuses some people when they're starting, but keep that in mind. So we have food, we have the other snakes that are available. So now what you can do is if you were to start building out some more complex functionality, you have access to where all of the other snakes are on the board, and you can start making some decisions based on what their health is, what their position is on the board, all that sort of stuff. And we also provide one more, which is you, and that's your snake. So we'll give you your snake ID, the health that you're at, your body length, and some more information. So that covers the API. As far as Heroku goes, so I did mention that what we can do is we can actually do some deploys directly from the Heroku command line. So let's go git status. Do we have anything changed here? So let's stage a new change. Let's
change the color.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and so the default color is let's go and take a look here. It's like a medium gray. Let's what does the Twitch chat want the snake color to be? And I'll give it a couple seconds because I think there's a little bit of a delay. But I'll talk a little bit about the color option here. So what you want to do is you want to select a hex code specifically for this. It doesn't take any string values, unfortunately. So what we'll do, I'm not clicking the right thing here, is we've provided a nice little URL where you can go and pick a color directly from Google. Google has this nice little tool. Let's take a look at the chat. So we've got a bunch of different options. Let's take the one which is, I don't know how to pronounce it, puce? Let's plug that in.
That is correct, yes.
Let's just see what color that is, because I'm curious. That's a nice color. Let's use that. Might also blend in with the food dots as well. Okay, so we've now made our color change. And so if we do another git status, this is going to show us that we've modified our file. So let's, git add, git commit -m, change the color of the snake. So we've done that. So now what we can do is, before I deploy this, I'm actually going to disable our automatic deployments that we have set up. So this is going to not trigger anymore from the tutorial branch. And so what I'm going to demo here is if you decide that you don't want to connect your GitHub account, we're going to use the GitHub Heroku CLI directly. So we've logged into Heroku already, and what we can now do is if we go Heroku git, let's see what some of the options are here, because Heroku git remote. So what this is going to do is this is going to add the didn't specify the app there. Brandon Node Snake, I believe is what we called it. Brandon Node Snake, yes. So what this is going to do is this is going to add Heroku as a point where we can actually deploy our code to as if it were a Git repository. And it effectively is a Git repository. You can, if you choose not to use GitHub, you can actually just use Heroku as your Git repository. The unfortunate side effect is you don't get some of the collaboration options that GitHub provides. So now what we've done is if I do git remote -v, this is going to show all of the remotes that I have. So Heroku is the new one that was added, and that's used for fetching and pushing. So let's do git push origin Heroku. So before, what we were doing is we were pushing to the tutorial branch. We're going to do that still. But what we're also going to do is push it to Heroku. Git push origin, git push Heroku tutorial. So rather than origin, so origin is kind of like a default keyword in Git for the origin of where your code is coming from. And that in this scenario is our GitHub repository. And we've added another remote called Heroku. And so this is going to push to that Heroku repository, which we've added. So if I do git push Heroku tutorial, push to non-master branch, skipping build. I think what we have to do is we actually have to set the not push master. There we go. So git push Heroku master. So this is going to now, we'll see that the output here is a little bit different than the GitHub output, which is effectively just pushing code to that remote. What Heroku is now doing is outputting what we saw in the activity feed into our terminal here. And so now we can see that the deploy was verified and we're done. Excuse me. And we can now see that we've released version 7. If we go over to the Heroku activity page, we can see that we did a deploy for version 7. Let's go and take a look at this because I'm curious what was actually deployed. Okay, that's okay. So now if we go back to create a game, I have a feeling it has reverted some of our code because it pushed the master branch, but we'll see here. Yes, so that's what I thought. So I think there is a way to push a non-master branch, but typically speaking, if you're using the Heroku CLI, what you want to do is you want to have a branching and merging model, which is a little bit more complicated than it sounds. But for the simplicity of explaining this, using Git, you need to branch off of your code and then merge it back into master. But a person in the chat has graciously given me a command that I can run to actually push our code on this branch. And so we can see over on the right side here that your build in progress was triggered. Also, thank you, 210. And I'll explain that command that I actually just ran a little bit. So instead of running git push Heroku master, what we're doing is we're pushing the current branch that we're on, and we're going to be pushing it to this, or effectively aliasing or masquerading as this branch. And it's basically a way to get around that master-specific branch. So now if we go back and we create a new game, we should see the functionality that we were seeing before where the snake goes in circles. There we go.
And we're puce.
And we're puce. That is correct. I like that color. That's a nice color. Okay. So again, we'll do a little bit more exploration of making our snake a little bit smarter in the next tutorial that I'm going to be doing later this week. But for now, I think we're going to call it here. And yeah, if you're interested in starting out building with this snake, what you can do is go to the Battlesnake official starter snake node, click on fork, and follow along with this video. And you too, yourself, might be able to deploy a snake and getting it running on play.battlesnake.com.
So yeah, so thank you so much, Brandon, for coming out and walking us through that and learning a little bit about how Heroku's changed live on the stream.
Yeah, no problem.
But once again, thank you so much, Brandon, for coming by, and we'll see everybody next time, which will be Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Awesome. See you, everybody.